order. Jacob Collier to move the motion.
Thank you, Ms Hobhouse, and it's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair. I beg to move that this House has considered e-petition 715292 relating to statutory maternity and paternity pay. And it's a privilege to open this very busy debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee, with the petition before us calling for statutory maternity and paternity pay to match the national living wage. It has attracted a great deal of public support from families who want to see Parliament look again at how we can help parents in the first months of a child's life. And I'd like to thank the petition creator, Grace Carter, and the thousands who have signed it for prompting this important discussion. The petition highlights a simple contrast that many parents experience. The national living wage is meant to ensure a basic standard of living for workers, but during maternity or paternity leave, state support falls well below that level. At present, statutory maternity pay after the first 6 weeks equates to just £4.99 per hour, compared to the national living wage of £12.21, 55% lower than the income the law itself defines as the minimum required to live on. It is hard to justify a minimum income for work, but not for caring for newborns, and families really feel that gap in their pocket. In response to this petition, the Government has stated that statutory payments are designed to provide a measure of security rather than a full wage, and that any... I will.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. A shocking 37% of children and young people in Greater Manchester are living in poverty, and yet maternity pay remains far below basic living standards, as you were just saying now. So does the Honourable Member agree that the raising statutory maternity pay to a livable wage would help tackle the crisis of child poverty in the UK and give children a better start in life?
Yes, and those are some of the themes that I'm going to come on to, because we know from parents like Grace and the stories that we're going to hear throughout this debate today that the current system leaves huge gaps and is not supporting families or children in the way that we should.
On that point, does my honourable friend give
I will.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My constituents, Stacey, Caitlin, Julia and Alison, maintain that the current rates of maternity and paternity pay are woefully inadequate. One advised me that they actually delayed having children until they were financially secure, and it's unlikely that they will consider having a second child. And therefore, does my honourable friend agree that introducing parental leave as a day one right is a welcome first step, but the review of parental leave should include a significant rise in the rates of statutory pay to at least the national living wage, and 6 weeks for dads on 100% pay, because current pay is far below basic living standards, and families in my Western Bartonshire constituency can't afford leave?
Well, he's a great champion for his constituents, and lots of the issues that he notes are going to come out in the debate today, and he's right to say that the Government has begun the first ever full review of paternal leave and pay, which is a serious and welcome step.
On that point, would my honourable friend give way? I thank my honourable friend for giving way and for leading this debate today. Many of my constituents have written to me, including Helen, Lauren, Laura, Kaylee. And Helen asked me particularly to raise this point. When she went on maternity leave, she needed support from her partner. 1 in 4 women have a caesarean birth, and physical recovery can often take 6 weeks, yet their partner must return to work after only 2 weeks paternity pay. And that is why we need this wide-ranging review. This is heartbreaking for mothers and fathers left in a really difficult position, unable even sometimes to lift and carry their young child.
Well, I know that that is the experience of many parents, and I'm sure that the Government is going to look at that as part of the review that they're undertaking. Under the current arrangements, a mother or primary adopter can receive maternity pay for up to 39 weeks. For the first 6 weeks, that pay is 90% of average weekly earnings. For the following 33 weeks, it falls to a flat statutory rate or 90% of earnings, whichever is lower. Statutory paternity pay lasts for 2 weeks at the same flat rate. I'll give way to a Liberal Democrat colleague.
thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. The current support for multiple birth families is currently inadequate. Samantha from Wincanton is a mother of twins who, after giving birth, received the same statutory maternity pay as a parent of one child, despite having to pay double for the cost of essential childcare, equipment, etc., etc. So does the honourable member agree with me and recognise that the financial equality faced by parents of twins and agree that the government's forthcoming parental leave review must address that exact disparity?
Well, I think she's highlighted an area that does need to be addressed, and I think one of the starkest glaring inequalities in the system is that dads who are self-employed or freelance are not eligible for anything, and I think that is something that the government should look at.
On that point, another glaring sort of missing piece, I think my most important point is, as well as supporting mothers and fathers, it's so important we also support those who suffer the tragic loss of a baby. Will my honourable friend therefore join me in welcoming our government's commitment to introduce a right for workers, including those experiencing pregnancy loss before 24 weeks, to take time away from work to grieve?
Hear, hear.
Well, absolutely, and he's a real champion of his constituents in Beckenham and Penge, and I, of course, welcome as well that commitment that the government has made. Shared parental leave was designed to bring flexibility. I'll make some progress if I can. To bring flexibility, but in practice, very few families can afford to take it at the current levels. The House of Commons Library notes that only 5% of eligible fathers take it up, with most saying that they can't afford it. The United Kingdom offers one of the longest periods of maternity leave in the developed world, yet one of the lowest payment rates. And the outcome is predictable, that mothers often return to work earlier than they would like, fathers and parents take little to no time, and the unequal division of care that begins at birth shapes the patterns of earnings and progression for the years afterwards. Recent research by the University of Bath and its partners, Working Families and the Fatherhood Institute, tested the impact of a more generous and flexible leave offer for fathers. It modelled what would happen if paternity leave were extended from 2 to 6 weeks to be taken flexibly within the first year and paid at a meaningful rate. The findings were striking. Better pay produced much higher take-up by fathers, improved well-being for both parents, a closer connection of women to the workforce, and lower staff turnover for employers. When only jobs and earnings were considered, the policy still brought a net gain to the economy. When well-being and family outcomes were added, these benefits rose sharply. In every scenario, families and employers were better off when parental leave was properly paid. And these aren't just numbers. They mean families spending real time together, children getting a better start, and businesses keeping valued staff. The evidence is clear. When leave is paid at a level parents can afford, everyone benefits. I will give way.
Thank the honourable friend for giving way. I've been contacted by a number of constituents who are concerned about the requirement to have worked continuously with the same employer to qualify for statutory maternity pay, so that women who change jobs shortly before pregnancy are excluded from statutory maternity pay. They miss out on 6 weeks at 90% of average weekly earnings, and instead they receive the lower maternity allowance, which is obviously creating a financial strain. It's forcing people to an early return to work and harms maternal and child well-being. I wonder if he agrees with me that this issue needs to be addressed and that we need to provide fair support for all working mothers.
Yes, it does, and I do think the day one rights that the government will be introducing will be helpful in the context that he set out. And ministers have rightly said that they want to remove the barriers that discourage people from having children that they would like to have, and parental leave and pay are at the centre of that effort. If families feel that taking leave means that they can't get by or they'll delay decisions, we know that the support needs to be in place so that they can make these choices freely. And changing this system is therefore about supporting families, maternal health, and sustaining a strong economy that is built on fairness and security. I will.
Thank you very much. I thank the honourable member for giving way, and I think this is a very not just valuable debate, but important one. But would he agree with me that as well as having new policies, we have to know that they are being implemented properly and fairly? And so it will be necessary to require large employers to publish their policies and their data in the same way as we have for gender pay.
Well, I think she can hear from the Chamber that there is support for that position. I'm sure that the Government Minister has heard that. Trade unions have welcomed the government's review, and I declare an interest as a proud Unison and GMB member. GMB is pleased that the government is listening, and it calls for 12 months maternity pay, stronger protection against discrimination and fairer rights for fathers and partners, including 6 weeks paternity leave on equal pay. The union's model parental leave agreement also advocates paid emergency bereavement leave and carers leave, recognising that decent parental pay and leave boosts retention and well-being. The TUC, representing over 5 million workers, warns that the current system entrenches inequality by excluding many women, the self-employed and those in insecure work.
On that point,
I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he will know that under the current system, far fewer dads take parental leave, which actually worsens the gender pay gap. In 5 years after becoming mothers, many workers lose up to £65,000 worth of earnings. So it's clear that better paid, longer, more usable partner leave is beneficial for all families. Would my honourable friend agree that as the government reviews this, it should look to examples like Spain, 16 weeks at 100% pay, to see what progress Britain could be making?
I do agree, and that's obviously, I think that is something that the government will be looking at, those international comparisons and where Britain is in the league tables. The TUC seeks day one rights, individual entitlements to paid leave and higher pay rates so that all families can benefit, including single, kinship, adoptive and surrogate parents and those in atypical roles.
I'm grateful to him. And I wonder if he agrees with me that the government's ongoing review into parental leave is an absolutely cracking opportunity for the government to fill in a gap that couldn't currently exist for those who are self-employed and seeking to grow their family by adoption, because currently they're not entitled to anything like maternity allowance or maternity or paternity pay. Does he agree that that would be a very good thing that could come out of the parental leave review?
Yes, and she highlights a stark inequality that currently exists that the government needs to address. Behind every statistic is a story. Pregnant Then Scrooged's recent campaign has gathered testimony from families across the UK who face the brutal consequences of an inadequate system at the moment. Take Laura from the West Midlands. She had to return to work just 11 weeks after giving birth because she couldn't afford the mortgage repayments on her low maternity pay. She said that she'd been overwhelmed with guilt over the limited bonding time that she had in those early months due to returning to work, and it impacted her mental health greatly. And then there's Izzy from Chester. Recovering from an emergency caesarean, she was left alone in pain, unable to feed herself and a baby. Her wound later ruptured and it became infected. She believes that this wouldn't have happened if her husband had been at home longer. Naya from London told us about the impact of the aftermath of her traumatic birth. She slept on the floor for weeks and was unable to function. She said that she couldn't barely think about how she would have coped if her husband wasn't around. And finally, one parent who wanted to remain anonymous, she had a reflection that captures the long-term cost of the current system. She said, "I'm struggling to see how we can possibly have a second child because of all of this. I'm very happy, grateful and content with one, but it feels like choice is starting to be taken out of our hands."
Thanks very much for giving way. Does the honourable gentleman agree with me that kinship carers, people who adopt children and foster carers, for example, should be included in any review? You can give these people, the heroes of our communities, as much time off as you want, but they need some sort of financial stability during that period. £4.99, as you mentioned before, quite simply isn't enough.
Yes, and I want to pay tribute to him as a long-time campaigner on these issues, and I know that that's something that the government has heard him say and will continue to hear him say. Because we know that there's huge costs associated with this. A nursery space for an older child during this time can cost between £1,200 a month for 3 days a week, while the average mortgage is between £800 to £1,000 a month. Add in household bills, food and transport, and it becomes painfully clear how impossible it is to survive on the statutory maternity pay of £4.99 an hour. Yep.
Thank my honourable member for giving way. He's very articulately laid out the reason for reform of the current situation. Would he agree with me that the best way to do this would be for the government to deliver the new deal for working people in full, including reforming parental leave? Families deserve fair pay and real choice to care for their children without financial strain.
Yes, I do agree with him, and also pay tribute to the work that he's done in this area as well. Every change must be responsible with public money and manageable to employers. The evidence suggests that this can be done. Changes can be phased over time so that payroll systems and budgets can adjust. However, it's crucial that this reform is not simply passed on to employers who are already facing rising costs. As the petitioner has argued, this change should be about government investment, recognising the economic and social value of supporting families, just as we do in other forms of social security.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. He's laying out a very powerful case for us boosting maternity and paternity pay. Does he agree with me that actually if we're really going to give meaningful choice to families as to whether they would like to actually spend more time at home in the early months, which is shown to have real developmental benefits for children, or go back into the workplace, then we absolutely have to address the fact that, as he has set out so clearly, maternity and paternity and shared parental leave pay is less than half the minimum wage and not excessive, as the Leader of the Opposition has previously stated.
Well, I do agree with her, and I think it's quite stark that there's lots of parties represented here, but not one from the official opposition, apart from the Shadow Minister. And ultimately, this is about the country that we choose to be. The first months of a child's life are not a private indulgence, they are a public good. When parents are able to present, children flourish, mothers recover, fathers bond, and families become the firm foundation of a stronger, healthier society. When that support is absent, we all pay the price, not immediately, but inevitably. This is not merely a question of fairness, it is a matter of foresight and basic national good.
Thank him for giving way. I'm never quite sure which way to contribute in this debate. I'm married to an obs and gynae doctor. I am a triplet, and I've got an 18-month-old. And the general election was called 3 weeks after she was born. So I'm never sure which way to pivot. But actually, I want to take the macro argument, which is our birth rate as a country is 1.41 to 1.56, depending on what you look at. Actually, would he agree with me that there is a pure, very simple economic argument to making sure that our country is growing its population from the grassroots? If we fail to do that, the cost is going to be considerable in the long run.
Well, absolutely, and I note that he's got a lot of experience in his own family to bring to this debate, and I wonder if his child's watching this debate here tonight. A parental leave system that works for every family, for employers and freelancers, for single parents and kinship carers alike, is not just a cost to be endured, but it is an investment for our shared future. And it's in that spirit that I look forward to the debate from honourable members here tonight.
I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in the debate. This is a very popular debate for good reasons. I will put an informal time limit of 2 minutes. I'm intending to call the front bench at 6:58. You can sit down. And so you can make the calculations yourselves. As we get further into the debate, how much time there is at the end and how fair to be to colleagues. And please keep your interventions, if you have them, as short as possible. The question is that this House has considered e-petition 715292 relating to statutory maternity and paternity pay. I call Rachel Muskell.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to see you in the Chair, and I do congratulate the Petitions Committee and all petitioners in bringing this forward. I'm going to home in on a specific issue, and that is with regard to self-employed adopters. We know the real inequality which is built into the system, where self-employed adopters are not able to access the pay or even allowances which parents can. Of course, when taking a new child into your home through adoption, there are significant challenges, and it's really important that you can build stability, attachment and security for that child. But without the resources to do that, many adopters have made the positive choice not to adopt a second child, or indeed people in the process are not able to embark further on the journey. That is denying children access to a family when we have got so many children, over 80,000 children in care at the moment, and it's absolutely vital that we change the system to ensure that we at least give those parents the same equivalence and sufficiency in their adoptee pay. And therefore, what I would ask of government is that they really do engage and listen to the work that has been done by organisations like Adoption UK and Homes for Good in looking into this issue, which has identified that whilst there are voluntary arrangements at the moment, that they're simply not working, and we need statutory arrangements for adopters. Only 90% of only 10% of adopters actually had their social workers tell them about the voluntary arrangements to be able to access resources from a local authority, which is given at discretion. In fact, we found that 34% of local authorities didn't even have 66% of authorities didn't even have a policy around how they would give that pay to adoptive parents. It's not for local authorities. We need a statutory provision in place, and I trust that the Minister will take that cause on.
Welsh, sorry. Michelle Welsh.
Thank you. When a child is born, the world changes, not just for the parents, but for the child, whose entire future development begins right there in those first precious moments. The period from conception to age 2, what we call the first 1001 days, is the most critical window for brain development and emotional security. This profound scientific truth forms the ultimate moral argument for generous, equitable maternity and paternity pay. This is not a conversation about employment benefits, it's a conversation about human development, our country's future. The foundation for a child's future health, well-being and capacity to learn is laid down in those first 1001 days, and the very first days and weeks are perhaps the most vital. Why? Because this is a time when the baby's brain makes billions of connections, shaped by their environment. Their primary input they need is secure attachment, which comes from a loving, available and responsive parent. And let me be clear, as many in this room will know, those first few days, those first few weeks and those first few months are hard. They're difficult. And I'm fed up of mothers being treated as second-class citizens. For the mother, maternity pay is crucial for physical and mental recovery from childbirth, and to allow for uninterrupted bonding and establishing feeding routines, which are the cornerstones of that secure attachment. It ensures that exhaustion and financial anxiety do not hijack this delicate foundational relationship. For the father or non-birthing parent, this early time is just as essential. Their presence facilitates critical family adjustment, supports the birthing parent's recovery and enables their own essential bonding, a key factor in reducing postnatal depression for both parents. When parental pay is too low, parents are forced back to work too early. They are forced to prioritise their pay over their child's neurological and emotional development. Historically, our policies have had a clear gender bias. Maternity pay, what's somewhat perhaps improving, still often sees the mother bear the financial penalty of taking long leave. Paternity pay, however, is also often a token gesture, a week or two at statutory minimum, sending a damaging message that the father's role or the birthing role partner is secondary. The moral failure has consequences. It perpetuates gender inequality. It penalises the mother's career, entrenches her as a default primary carer, and contributes directly to the gender pay gap. It limits the father's role. It effectively blocks fathers who wish to be highly involved from the start, hindering their bond with the child. The moral solution is equal, well-paid, non-transferable parental leave for both parents. We must elevate the financial value of the father's presence, or the other mother's or the father's presence, from a mere detriment to an essential contribution, thereby normalising co-parenting and supporting the mother. The investment in parental pay is not a cost to the economy, it is a strategic investment in our human capital. When we support parents during that first 1,001 days, we are investing in our public health. Secure attachment leads to improved mental health comfort for both parents and children, reducing the long-term strain on healthcare and social services. A stronger workforce where parents feel supported, they return to work more focused, more loyal and more productive. Generous parental leave is a key tool for talent attraction and retention.
Thank you, Mrs. Lockhart. And can I commend the Honourable Member for Burton and Uttoxeter for so eloquently and emotionally intelligently introducing this debate. Just over a year ago, the campaign group The Dad Shift came to Parliament, and I was grilled by teachers and students from Europa School based in my Oxfordshire constituency about my support for better paternity leave and pay. They told me that at 2 weeks off, at less than half the minimum wage, the UK is amongst the worst in Europe for provision. This is unacceptable, and therefore it is welcome that in the Government's parental leave and pay review they state objectives to ensure there are sufficient resources and time away from work to support new and expectant parents' well-being and to support parents to make balanced childcare choices that work for their families. I happily give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I've heard from many parents in the South Cotswolds whose recent experiences don't fit neatly into the government's model of pregnancy, whether it's having twins, postnatal depression or managing debt. Every family situation is different. Does my honourable friend agree with me that the government's current system doesn't have the flexibility to accommodate these different circumstances and that this needs to be addressed in the review?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and she makes the very liberal point that we should always remember that every individual and family circumstances are different, and it's important that the British state recognises that individuality rather than expecting everyone to fit into a convenient spreadsheet. In order to make some of the improvements that are needed, both the rate at which paternity pay is paid and the length of leave must be addressed. In its current form, fathers and non-birthing parents are not supported to take time off from their work because they cannot afford to do so. A large number of constituents have written to me on this topic, and I'm sure that many more who haven't had the time to even consider writing to me are deeply affected by this, as shown by the large number of signatories to this petition which has triggered this debate. And just to make some of the points that have been represented to me by my constituents. The low rates of statutory pay for both parents has huge financial implications for new parents, especially those in single-income households. Living on so little during one of the most vulnerable periods of their lives is a significant issue. I'm happy to give way to my honourable friend.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way. The government's stated first objective in setting this review is to support the physical and mental health of women after giving birth to a child. One cannot overestimate the amount of mental stress it is to live in poverty or without enough resource for your family. So does my honourable friend agree with me that the Liberal Democrat policy to double statutory and shared parental pay to £350 a week is the right thing?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and that is one of many excellent Liberal Democrat measures that we would put forward for this, which my honourable friend, the member for Richmond Park, will tell us far more about, and I don't want to steal too much more of her thunder. In conclusion, polling for the Dad Shift in Movember finds that the financial pressure is wrecking the health of new parents and their families, and over half of new dads report mental and physical health consequences. 61% become less present with their families, and 57% are put off having more children. So whilst we in the Liberal Democrats may not be able to go quite as far as is asked for in this e-petition, we nevertheless support a number of very significant changes. And as I say, my honourable friend, the member of Richmond Park, will say a lot more. Thank you.
Paul Stella Creasy, can I remind members to please stick to the informal time limit? If you don't, I will have to make it a formal time limit. Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to serve on the chairmanship. Thank you to Grace and to the member for Burton and Uttoxeter. I want to make a speech on behalf of every parent right now checking their bank balance, sat in the back of a dingy, soft play centre, weeping silently and looking at us and wondering and screaming, when will Parliament get it? They will understand the irony that we're having this debate in half-term. It sounds impossible when you say it out loud. We think in this country, if you have a baby, you should live on less than the national minimum wage. Of course, this petition has merit. It speaks to the problems that begin at birth and lock in inequality throughout the lives of parents. Beyond universal credit working and pregnant, we'll claw back some money just to make your life even more complicated. Be an entrepreneur or self-employed, you've got no help at all. Little wonder maternity actions show that motherhood is often associated with debt, and it doesn't stop there. And let's be clear, this is not taking time off. This is taking on another job for a very expensive clientele. £406 a week, it's estimated it costs to look after a newborn baby. Have another one, do the maths, and realise why this place has to up its game. Because it's not about counterproductive measures, it's actually about families. When people attack breakfast clubs, they're not telling us that the state should look after people's kids, they're helping parents for whom a 9 o'clock start is impossible with holding down a job where they're expected to be in a meeting at 9 o'clock. And affordable childcare isn't yet affordable. I had a constituent who wrote to me who's just about to have a second child. Even with the 30 hours, even with the tax-free allowance, his family have still got to find £3,000 a month. It doesn't stack up. Before you get onto the cost of the half-term clubs, every extra parent trying to find 200 quid this week, still dealing with the credit card bill from the summer holidays. And above all, the way we do it locks in inequality for mums because they get written off by the motherhood penalty because they get lumbered with the childcare, and it locks out dads from being able to play the roles and the second parents that they want to roll. We haven't got time to talk about the issues around single parents, children with special educational needs, disabled parents. The review is great, but we've got the evidence. We don't need to wait to do something now to help all those people screaming in the soft play centre. We could bring in statutory pay changes. We could bring in an equal six-week right and 90%. We had a chance to do it in the Employment Rights Bill in the Lords, and we lost it by 7 votes. There are interim measures. I hope the Minister will hear this cry of pain, because this week, above all week, parents will be begging for payday to turn up, worried that they're letting down their kids, and above all, asking us in politics to help them.
Thank you. Before I call Jim Shannon, he will still have his 2 minutes, and then I have a formal time limit of 90 seconds. Okay? Jim Shannon.
Madam Chair, you're very kind. Thank you very much. A pleasure to serve under your chairship. I congratulate the Honourable Gentleman for Burton and Oxford for setting the scene. This affects every single constituency in the United Kingdom. When the babies are born, it's a time of beauty, learning to navigate your wee family. That sounds so precious. Indeed, it is precious. However, reality is such that when you cocoon your baby, the bills need to be paid at a time when you're outlaying more money than you ever had. You're buying nappies, new clothes, the pram, the crib, the car seats. You back a substantial amount. Whilst it may seem that mum and dad to be on 90% for the first number of weeks is okay, the fact is that there's pressure. What about the mortgage? What about the rent obligation? What about the car insurance? What about the car payments? They'll still be made in time. Little wonder that the 2025 Maternity Action survey revealed that some 90% of respondents worried about money during their maternity leave. The financial strain has a significant negative impact on women's mental well-being, and indeed a Unison survey of 2025 found that 57% of respondents felt pressure to return to work earlier than they would have liked. Some mums are told the most important time of their lives are those early years with baby, and yet there can be no doubt that our mums are under financial strain right from the outset, and it does worry me. Mum guilt, it's a real thing. It's not something just people talk about. It's not a thing on a paper or a motto, you see. It's real. They're not letting their child down. And I put underlined, and Northern Ireland DUP have recognised the need for childcare, and the scheme that they've brought on has been very successful. I'm sure the Minister is aware of that, and it does give some help at the time that it's needed. 12 weeks of severely reduced pay will not enable mum to get baby into their own wee routine and ensure that mum's physical and emotional health is back on the level to return to work. So I urge Government and the Minister to work on this issue, recognising that stable homes cannot exist with parents with newborns wondering whether to turn the heat on or just have vegetable soup for the 4th meal in a row. This shouldn't be the case. Let's change it and allow the families the time they need to bond. Thank you.
Second time.
Thank you, Chair. There's a sense of irony that last year I was given a minute in this chamber to speak about the inadequacy of paternity leave, and this year I've been given 90 seconds. But 2 years ago today, I was beginning my journey as a first-time parent, which means it's about 2 years since I last had a good night's sleep. But if the Minister would like to give my little boy a birthday present today on his 2nd birthday, then he could extend parental leave and paternity leave in particular, so that if he chooses to have children in future, he can have some time with with his child, because it is simply not right that fathers only receive 2 weeks statutory leave. It denies fathers a chance to bond with their children and perpetuates the outdated stereotype that women are expected to be the primary caregiver. And importantly, the way women give birth in this country has changed, and around 40% of all births in England are now carried out by caesarean section, with a recovery time of up to 6 weeks. Why is a father expected to return to work, leaving his partner with a newborn baby when they are still recovering from major surgery, unable to drive or even lift their child safely? We should be encouraging fathers to spend time at home with their partner. Now, I was proud to sit on the Employment Rights Bill Committee earlier this year to play my role in extending paternity leave rights to more dads in my constituency, but we must go further. As a country, we're getting older. We need more people to have children. So will the Minister confirm today that the review of parental leave and pay will at the very least consider increasing statutory paternity leave to 6 weeks, will commit to reforming shared parental leave so it's more attractive to parents, and will deliver on our manifesto pledge to give every child in Gloucester the very best start in life? Thank you.
Anne Davis.
Under your chairmanship, the UK's statutory paternity leave offer is one of the least generous and the lowest in Europe at £187 per week. In fact, the TUC reports that half the families struggle financially when a parent takes paternity leave, as does pregnant then screwed. Research again showed that 70% of fathers did not take their leave simply due to the cost. And of course, the statutory maternity pay is also provided at the same rate after the first 6 weeks, an amount which is significantly less than the national living wage of around £488 a week. And if you're self-employed and a man, then you get nothing. So my constituent, Tamara Morris, currently is preparing to go off on maternity leave, and the amount Tamara expects to receive will not even cover her half of the household bills, and she's really worried on how her family are going to cope. The UK Government could have rectified this during the Employment Rights Bill, and I pay respect to my Plaid Cymru colleague, the Baroness Smith of Llanfaes, for her efforts in the other place for pushing to increase the rate of statutory parental pay. If child poverty is really a priority for this government, then they must consider the impact of poor parental pay on the first few months of a child's life. And I call on the UK Government to address the issues we've set out today to finally put them right.
Francis.
Thank you. My honourable friend from Burton and Toxteth for his introduction. I know from my mailbag the importance of statutory maternity and paternity pay across Bexley and Crayford. And my constituents have pointed out to me that the evidence shows the current situation with both leave and pay for new parents is bad for everyone, for mums, dads, kids and society as a whole. I'll briefly say again what I said last year. I accept we've moved forward since my twins were born 12 years ago, but my experience of my children being born 9 weeks early, of my wife having a C-section, of one of my children being diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 12 days old, and me working through the whole 6 weeks of them being in special care because I wasn't entitled to a day of paternity care pay, continues to live with me, and it's why we have seen that benefit in neonatal care and some benefit in paternity pay, but we must continue to battle for better rights for parents. 1 in 3 dads don't take that paternity leave because they can't afford to, and the system's complicated and we don't always give people the support they need, and we must modernise to deliver for today's families. And we know from mothers that a survey undertaken by Maternity Action has shown that of 1,000 new mothers, the majority have had to resort to credit cards or loans to finance their maternity leave. And others have said, over half have said they've had to return to work early as it's impossible to support themselves and their new baby. It's therefore vital we ensure that new mothers have access to the support they need. They should all be supported to focus on their own well-being and their baby's health, both during pregnancy and after birth.
Manuela Partingella.
This afternoon, and also I want to thank the petitioners for bringing this important issue before Parliament. Having a baby should never be what pushes a family into financial hardship. But for too many new parents, statutory maternity and paternity pay simply does not meet the basic cost of living. In my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon, many parents work in sectors such as hospitality, tourism and the creative industries where income can be seasonal or irregular, and I often hear from constituents who simply cannot afford to take the time they need to recover after childbirth or to bond with their baby. That is not only unfair but also short-sighted, both socially and economically. Every parent should have genuine flexibility and choice in those first crucial months. All form of Yes, I will.
Thank you for giving way. I won't be the only parent in this house who regrets every day that they're not going to spend with their children. One of my constituents is a PhD student studying paternity. She's found that men's mental health is particularly vulnerable at the point of childbirth and the point of return to work, and the two factors that can reduce this are time and control. Will she join my call to the government that men should have a statutory right to coordinate their return to the workplace with their employers?
Thank you for his intervention. And actually, I was a PhD student when I had my first child, so yes, I understand the challenges that students face. All forms of parental leave and pay, including for adopted and foster parents, self-employed parents, should be available from day one. Statutory maternity and shared parental pay should be doubled and paternity leave increased. When parents and carers are supported to take time off, children benefit from that early care and attention. It helps parents return to work, reduces pressure on household finances, and supports a more equal sharing of responsibilities at home. The government's review of parental leave is an opportunity to act, and I hope it looks seriously at the low statutory rates and creates a system that reflects the realities of modern family life. Families deserve the time, flexibility, and security to give their children the best possible start in life.
Mark Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Working families form the backbone of this country. They go to work, they increase our prosperity, and they raise the next generation at the same time. It's a hard job. It always will be. It should be, but it shouldn't be this hard. Statutory maternity pay in the UK is one of the lowest in Europe. Less than half the minimum wage after 6 weeks. Maternity Action have reported that half of new mums cut their leave short, with 97% saying that money was a reason for their choice. No choice at all. Dads aren't exactly doing better. They get 2 weeks at the same maximum of £187 a week. One dad in Leeds South West and Morley told me, a medium worker, that he'd lose £103 a day on statutory paternity pay. If a medium worker's forced to make that choice, can we even call it paternity leave? Especially since it doesn't encourage dads to take that time with their children and support their partners. When my first child, Oscar, was born, he timed it perfectly. I was a teacher at the time, and he arrived 2 weeks before half-term, so I got 3 weeks with him, but even that wasn't enough. And as we all know, babies don't stick to schedules, and they certainly don't wait for government reviews. The government's review of parental leave is absolutely welcome, but 18 months is a very, very long time. The government can already consider Maternity Action's report, which asks for maternity and paternity pay to be increased in line with the living wage. They could also speak to the dad shift, who've proposed increasing the length of paternity leave. They could speak with our trade union friends too, but whoever they speak to, it's clear to me and to everyone here, families need proper paternity and maternity pay, and they need it now.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I want to congratulate all new parents, especially the arrival of baby Kai Belly to my cousin Jake and Shannon last week. A reminder of the joy that new life brings and the responsibility we have to support families at this crucial time. This is not just about numbers, it's about real families. One Portsmouth father told me he went back to work in bits and feeling useless 3 days after his son was born. His partner had undergone an emergency caesarean and could barely move, but he couldn't afford to lose another week's pay. Another father whose daughter arrived prematurely returned to his delivery driving job just 1 week. He said, "Every mile I drove, I felt I should be home." These are not isolated stories. They reflect what parents across the country are facing. And when fathers cannot afford to take leave, the burden falls entirely on mothers. And I've spoken to new mums recovering from major surgery, alone while caring for newborns and often other kids. The toll on their mental and physical health is profound. This is also a workplace safety issue. I heard from tradespeople who supported my tool theft campaign, returning to work on almost no sleep, operating heavy machinery and driving long distances and putting themselves at risk. One plainly told me, "I was in danger to myself, but I could not afford to stop." The petitioners are not asking for special treatment, they're asking for fairness, for statutory maternity and paternity pay to at least match the national living wage, for 6 weeks of ring-fence paternity leave, and for self-employed parents to be included. The status quo is failing. This is about fairness, it's about family, and it's about the kind of country that we want to be.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Chair, and thank the member for Burton and you, Doctor, for introducing this debate. Being a parent is the hardest job in the world, and I do believe the state has a duty to make it easier. With just 90 seconds, though, I want to focus on just one case study. Blanche is a fantastic mum who lives in Edinburgh South West. She's self-employed. So she found herself in an even more precarious position when she had a child. She works for herself. She was only entitled to a statutory allowance, a flat £187 per week, with no 6 weeks cushion, unlike the statutory maternity pay situation. As a result, she had to work right up until the morning she went into labour at 41 weeks, and then return to work almost instantly after using up her keep in touch days. To quote her directly, and I will warn members, this is perhaps a bit graphic, it was a shock to the system. Her body was sore, her breasts were leaking, and she was still bleeding, and she had to do work in this condition. And she highlights, along with the physical and logistical difficulties, she also felt stigmatised by medical staff and other parents who judged her for leaving her child to return to work so early, without understanding she was forced to do so by her financial situation. I spoke to the weekend, and she does plan to have another child. She's a fantastic mum, and I'm sure we all wish her well. But she hopes by then, Minister, that things will have changed. I know we can't do this overnight, but hopefully you can signal the start of a transition. Thank you. I should have said you.
This year, she was 7 months pregnant with her first child. She wants nothing more than to take time to care for a baby. When you're off work raising the next generation, the wages stop, but the rent doesn't, the energy bills don't, and other costs go up. This isn't just about Natalie, it's warehouse workers, firefighters, nurses, shop staff, working people who pay in their whole lives yet feel abandoned when they need the support the most. We want a system that respects work, respects family, respects parenthood. That means maternity and paternity pay raised to at least the national living wage. Proper, fully paid leave, like the Fire Brigade Union is fighting for in their Fight for 52 campaign. Parental leave is a day one right, not a privilege. I welcome the government's review of the parental leave system, and that all current and upcoming parental leave and pay entitlements will be in scope. No parent should be pushed into debt for having a baby. No mum should feel guilty for taking time to heal. No dad should be told 2 weeks is enough. Natalie had the courage to speak up, but this petition proves she's not alone. We're not asking for luxury. We're asking for fairness, dignity and the basic right to raise a child without being pushed into poverty.
Russell.
So in terms of this debate, lots of people in this region have heard me talking before about the fact that statutory paternity pay is so low that men commonly don't take it, and that shared parental leave is failing in that men do not take it up at all, particularly outside of London. And what we are seeing as a result is a massive hindrance to female work and participation in the workforce. But what I really want to talk about today is the fact that £187 a week simply doesn't provide enough for people to live on. That 70% of children in poverty in the UK have at least one working parent. It is this group that have the biggest levels of poverty. We need urgently to look at what it actually requires people to live on when they have children versus what we would like women to put up with. And that's what we've had for far, far too long. In terms of the statutory maternity pay, the reality is that 30% of domestic abuse starts during pregnancy. So what we are taking is an extremely vulnerable group of women, and then we are ensuring that they have not enough money for them to actually live on should they choose to leave their partners. It isn't just about making sure that we can all have posh prams. This is fundamentally about women being able to make decisions about their safety and the safety of their children. And I don't think that that is getting nearly enough airtime in this chamber. But lastly, the thing I'd like to draw attention to is around Maternity Action's position on maternity allowance and treatment for universal credit purposes. So if you receive statutory maternity pay in this country, it's treated as pay and you get universal credit. If you receive statutory maternity allowance, it's not treated in the same way, and you are likely to be £6,000 a year worse off than you would be in the equivalent situation with SMP. Thank you.
Simon Ofer.
Madam Chair, and I'd just like to say my son Jake and his partner Amber are about to have a child, which I'm very proud of. However, he's taking a loan to have 6 weeks off work because he believes it's important. In Spain, you get 17 weeks of full paid leave, and in Denmark, you get 24 weeks. So what are we doing in this country? As a practising GP, I've seen the cost of this policy. You have higher rates of postnatal depression in women. As the Honourable Member for Gloucester just said, men have sleepless nights and have higher rates of mental health issues, but much more importantly, the children suffer in this system. And that's what we've got to rebuild. We need to... This is actually a form of preventative health care. And I think what we need to do is build a parental leave system that recognises that caring is an investment and in healthier families and happier children and a fairer society, and that every parent, whatever their income, should have the chance to bond with their child without fear of financial hardship. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Thank you, Chair. When we talk about maternity and paternity pay, we're also talking about crucial economic infrastructure, the systems that underpin participation, equality, productivity and growth, crucially. A public good, not a private indulgence, as my honourable friend, who I'm grateful for calling for this debate, put it. Right now, our system isn't delivering any of that. ONS analysis shows that mothers lose an average of £65,000 in earnings in the first 5 years after their first child, and that's not only lost household income, it's lost tax receipts, it's lost skills, lost human capital for our wider economy. And shared parental leave, in theory, offers parents flexibility, but in practice remains inaccessible to most households. HMRC data shows that 17,000 claimants take it up per annum, but are generally disproportionately higher income families, and that's hardly a mass labour market instrument. So its design is complex, its rules are difficult to navigate, and pay levels are too low to make genuine choice possible. Put simply, a policy that works only on paper. And this inequity is most evident for self-employed fathers, who are excluded entirely from that statutory framework, as we've heard today. A self-employed mother can claim maternity allowance, yet no equivalent exists for fathers. And the evidence is clear. When fathers can afford to take that leave, mothers are better able to sustain labour market participation, the family income rises, the exchequer gains through productivity and tax receipts.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the government's full review of parental leave, which is in line with our promise to make work pay and will reshape the vital support which new parents are offered in Britain so that it can effectively and compassionately align with the changing demands of our modern world. And it's vitally important that this review is also looking at the support provided to bereaved parents, because it cannot be right that when mothers and fathers are facing the greatest tragedy that can affect any of us, the loss of a child, there are barriers to basic support. But I do think that there is more we can do to support families at the point that their child is first diagnosed with a serious condition. I recently met a constituent, Stephen, at a street surgery in Birch Hill, and we spoke about the challenges his family faced when supporting their daughter through her cancer treatment journey. Beyond the unimaginable emotional toll of caring for his daughter Edie, Stephen spoke to me about the often overlooked practical difficulties which arose for his family. He told me about how the cost of fuel, hospital parking and food quickly pushed his family into debt. That's why Stephen is backing calls for Hughes Law, which would allow the parents of critically ill children undergoing treatment, job protection and entitlement to statutory paid leave for from the first day of their child's diagnosis. Hughes Law is, of course, named after Hugh Mene-Davis, the 6-year-old son of Kerry and Francis Mene-Davis.
The honourable gentleman give way.
Of course.
I would like to add my voice to your call for Hughes Law and also ask you, was Edie okay?
Thank you for intervening. And I just wanted to end really by saying that when I met Stephen at my street surgery, I also got the chance to meet Edie, an energetic, enthusiastic young girl running around with her sister, recovering well from her terrible ordeal. She has been so brave, and I'm so proud to be standing here as her MP, sharing her and her family's story.
Thank you, Mr. Hophouse. It's a pleasure to speak with you, the Chair, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Burton Utoxeter, for introducing this petition so thoughtfully, as well as Grace Carter and the more than 100,000 signatories. For too many families, including those in my constituency of Cannock Chase, our current parental leave system simply does not work. In many households, especially in rural or more deprived areas where wages are lower and transport costs often higher, taking your full entitlement of parental leave is unaffordable. It's little wonder that 1 in 3 dads take no leave at all when their baby arrives. And we know the consequences of that. Around 2 in 5 births are by caesarean section, a procedure requiring considerable recovery time. In a constituency like mine, that can mean being stuck at home without the support of family, friends or a partner. Those early weeks can be isolating, and that's before you add in the exhaustion and recovery from major surgery. That is the value of paternity leave to new mums. On pay, we know that so many young people are putting off starting a family because of the sheer cost of parenthood. When I speak to people my age, many women feel that returning to work must be done even before the point where their 9 months of maternity pay comes to an end. But on the cost for employers, if we frame this in the context of staff morale, the conversation shifts to being about the cost of the system as it is now. What is it doing to fathers' mental health and productivity at work when they're not able to take time off with their children? So I urge the Minister, as part of this ongoing review into parental leave, which I'm so proud of, to consider the arguments and evidence of campaigners like the Dad Shift and Pregnant Then Screwed and thousands of families up and down this country that paternity pay and maternity pay not to push families into poverty and proper time for parents to be parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Charting a path to national renewal means making decisions today where the full benefits may not be felt for years to come. In the first few years of life, more than 1 million new neural connections are formed every second. During this time, more than any other, children must be nourished and supported by the scaffolding of happy, healthy lives. That means a decent, warm home so babies aren't using their energy to keep themselves warm, but to grow and develop. It means parents not ground down by bills piling up, families shielded from the impacts of poverty, and mothers not rushed back to work before their bodies have even fully healed, as is too often the case. We hear a lot about family values in this place. That has to mean taking real steps to make daily life easier, to make the sums add up at the end of the month. As a nation, we must improve maternity and paternity pay to genuinely provide all families with security and stability. We must build a country where children are nourished in their early years, parents treated with dignity through life's challenges, and people aren't sneered at for receiving support. A society that offers a helping hand, nurturing rather than sanctioning, one grounded in a belief in the value of every human life. Where doing all we can to give a baby the best first steps isn't seen as a cost on a Treasury spreadsheet, but as the duty of a decent society and an investment in a more prosperous country for all of us.
Thank you. Before I call the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, I want to thank everybody for making sure that everybody could get in. I hope you forgive me for being very tough. Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Ms Hobhouse. It's a real pleasure to serve under your chairmanship for the first time. Thank you also to the member for Burton and Uttoxeter and the Petitions Committee for bringing forward this debate. And can I just say, as a survivor of 3 maternity leaves, all on statutory pay, a C-section and a spell in the neonatal unit, can I just say all of the topics being raised today very much close to my heart. So I thank each and every one of you for your contributions and for representing your constituents so well on this issue. This summer, the government announced that it would undertake a parental leave and pay review, expecting to conclude in 18 months' time, and the Liberal Democrats welcome the government's commitment to this much-needed review on parental leave. Every child deserves the best possible start in life and the opportunity to flourish, no matter their background or personal circumstances. Too often, parents struggle on inadequate parental pay and without good enough access to shared leave. Childcare costs are eye-watering, and the balance between family life and work has only become harder and harder. Not only is this unfair on families, but it also weighs down on our economy. Liberal Democrats have been calling for an overhaul of the parental leave system to give parents a genuine choice over how to manage their affairs in the first months of their child's life. The Liberal Democrats were proud to introduce shared parental leave in government. However, years later, millions of parents are still being denied the choice to spend more time at home, with around a quarter of fathers ineligible for paternity pay. Meanwhile, the government is introducing wide-ranging changes to employment law through the Employment Rights Bill. This bill introduces a suite of new protections and entitlements of working families, including enhanced rights around leave, protection from dismissal and bereavement support. Currently, eligibility for paternity leave and unpaid parental leave requires employees to have a minimum length of service in order to qualify. From April 2026, the current qualifying service requirements will be removed, and this means that paternity leave and unpaid parental leave will become entitlements from the first day of employment, which is something that the Liberal Democrats called for in our 2024 general election manifesto. Liberal Democrats... happy to give way?
Thank you for giving way on that point. The Lib Dems may well have called for that in their manifesto, but of course the Lib Dems abstained on that very right to going to mothers when it came to a vote. Does she now regret that?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. Liberal Democrats support measures which work to strengthen employment rights. We welcomed aspects of the Employment Rights Bill, such as boosting statutory sick pay, strengthening support for whistleblowers and increasing support for carers, all of which move us in the right direction. However, we remain concerned about the specific way in which many of these measures are going to be implemented. We must ensure that this legislation strikes the right balance for both employees and for business, particularly small and medium enterprises. I've spoken with businesses in my constituency who tell me that they're being left in limbo by the vague framing of the bill, which leaves crucial detail up to secondary legislation and government reviews. This prevents long-term planning, and I'm disappointed that the government did not support amendments put forward by the Liberal Democrats which would have created more certainty for businesses. New measures to support workers must go hand in hand with much-needed reforms to support our small businesses and bring down their costs. We know that this government has inherited a mess. We know that the cause of the mess is a legacy of reckless economic mismanagement left behind by the previous government. Their record is a dispiriting picture of low growth, high interest rates and a record fall in living standards. But it is disappointing that the current government has taken decisions which have compounded many of these challenges for communities, businesses and individual families while presiding over very tight public finances and a stagnant economy. And that's why we urge the government to put in place a range of measures that will bring down business costs, unleash the power of our SMEs and power economic growth. Measures like scrapping the unfair national insurance rise, fixing the broken business rate system, bringing down the cost of energy by decoupling electricity and gas prices, and finally repairing the economic damage caused by the previous government's shambolic Brexit deal by cutting red tape and negotiating a new bespoke UK-EU customs union. These actions can breathe new life into our economy and our small businesses and will go a very long way in facilitating improvements to parental leave and pay. In our 2024 general election manifesto, we called for statutory maternity and shared parental pay to rise to £350 a week, increasing paternity pay to 90% of earnings with a cap for high earners, as well as introducing an extra use it or lose it month for fathers and partners, paid at 90% of earnings, again with a cap for high earners. These policies would not only benefit families but can also benefit businesses and the economy by encouraging workforce participation and making it easier for people to advance their career while starting a family. We hope that the government will look at these proposals closely while introducing a robust plan to cut business costs, boost growth and empower our SMEs. More broadly, I urge the government to look into the prevalent inequality in caring responsibility, and I ask what steps they're taking to support millions of family and kinship carers who have no paid leave at all. I also ask if they will commission a similar review into provision for unpaid carers and make carers leave paid. Thank you very much, Ms Holthouse.
Shadow Minister Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mrs Hobhouse. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon. And I want to thank the Honourable Member for Burton and Uttoxeter for so competently bringing this debate forward, for his excellent speech and for all the other contributions in the chamber this afternoon. I was particularly struck, this isn't in my speech but I'm going to mention it anyway, by the comments made by the Honourable Member for Bracknell around Hughes Law and the need for further work on bereavement support, and that led me to be reminded of one of my constituents who's called Clara Gilly, who has a very unusual brain cancer that came on, and the real life issues that I was having to deal with as her local MP were effectively the travel cost to Bristol when you've got a constituency in Devon. That's a very long way to go, and then the costs of adaptation, and I do recognise the calls for that and hope that the Minister will have heard that in terms of how we can help those parents whose children are sick and unwell and the costs that adds to them, because I've seen it very first hand, and there are, I'm sure, lots of other constituencies that would have a similar issue to that. So, Conservatives are proud to be the party that champions family life. We recognise that strong families are the bedrock of a healthy society, something else that has come out this afternoon. Britain is one of the best places to have a child and raise a family, following measures that the previous Conservative governments introduced to extend free childcare, support flexible working and enable shared parental leave. We understand... Sure.
thank the honourable member for giving way. As she's so proud of championing the record of her party, will she stand by the Leader of the Opposition's comments that paternity pay is excessive, and the donor to the Leader of the Opposition, Luke Johnson, who told the Bill Committee that I sat on that the worst thing about the Employment Rights Bill is extending paternity rights further?
Well, in terms of what the Leader of the Opposition said, I'm actually not 100% sure of the quote that is being said, so I'm not actually going to comment on that. I think it was taken quite significantly out of context, and in terms of the Bill Committee, I'm going to continue saying it. Look, at the end of the day, I'm the one here speaking this afternoon, so I'm at least interested in this debate. So let's keep talking, okay? So, we understand the challenges facing families, which is why we updated the system to enable greater flexibility in how parental leave is taken. We wanted to ensure that parents are supported to spending the precious first few weeks and months bonding with their newborn, promoting healthy attachment, which will set their child up for a successful future. I'm going to keep making some progress, if I may. We introduced the biggest, it's not because I don't want to take it, it's that actually I'm on a time limit. So we introduced the biggest expansion in childcare in England's history. It's heartening to see that Labour have continued our rollout despite their criticisms at the time. We backed new legislation to provide additional paid leave to parents whose baby requires neonatal care, allowing parents to spend more time with their baby in hospital instead of worrying about returning to work or having to take unpaid leave. We strengthened protections for pregnant women and new parents against redundancy, removing workplace discrimination and improving job security. We introduced shared parental leave for new parents, allowing parents to share up to 50 weeks of leave and up to 37 weeks of pay after the birth or adoption of a child. However, it is understandable that more needs to be done to encourage the uptake of shared parental leave. We know that among fathers who did not take shared parental leave, 45% were not even aware that it existed, according to a 2023 review under the previous government. Awareness is particularly lacking among smaller businesses, where 94% of managers in workplaces with 250 or more employees were aware of this position. It drops to 71% in workplaces with fewer than 50 employees. So importantly, our government brought statutory adoption leave and pay into line with statutory parental leave, ensuring that adoptive parents had the same rights as birth parents. Adoptive parents also became eligible to paid time off for up to 5 adoption appointments, something that I personally think is entirely welcome. This rightly, I'm going to keep going because I have got quite a lot to say. This rightly honours the contributions of parents who open their heart and home to children in need of a loving family, with 4,500 people claiming statutory adoption pay in 2024-25. In England alone, there are 2,940 children waiting for adoption as of September this year, so statutory adoption leave and pay is vital for increasing the number of adoptive parents. As the Honourable Member for Hazel Grove has noted previously, we need to do more to support adoptive parents who are self-employed, and that has come up loud and clear this afternoon. As things stand, statutory guidance allows local authorities to make discretionary means-tested payment equivalent to statutory adoption pay. However, as we heard from the Honourable Member for York Central earlier, the charity Home for Good discovered that 34% of local authorities have no policy in place for these payments, and worse still, 90% of self-employed adopters are not informed about these discretionary payments by their social worker, according to a 2022 survey by the APPG on adoption and permanence. Of course, we acknowledge the calls to go further with parental leave, and I'm sure that the Minister has also heard the pleas to include kinship carers in this review too. We will scrutinise the Government's review into parental leave, which they launched in July this year, to ensure that it strikes an appropriate balance between supporting families and backing businesses. Now, it is worth noting that the UK's parental leave policies rank comparatively well against countries around the world. The UK offers the 4th longest statutory maternity leave in the world, topped only by Estonia, Croatia and Bulgaria. The UK ranks 13th globally for length of statutory paternity leave. 30 countries globally have no statutory paternity leave at all. However, there is a fine balance between supporting parents to spend precious time with their child and protecting businesses from burdensome regulations. In our current economic climate, I believe that increasing statutory maternity and paternity pay would be counterproductive to businesses, especially SMEs, at a time when Labour is already saddling them with extra costs. Small business owners are facing enormous pressure. 17,000 high street businesses are expected to close this year alone, and retail businesses in my own constituency are telling me that they are now facing a doubling of their business rates. The Government's Employment Rights Bill as a whole is projected to cost businesses up to £4.5 billion annually and could increase the number of strikes to 53%. So increased parental pay will be of no help at all if you have lost your job in the first place. So within this context, it is our views that significant increases in statutory maternity and paternity pay are simply unaffordable for businesses or the public sector right now. It is also not clear how the state itself would afford this change either, and I'm sure that's something that the Minister will address later. We need to protect jobs for the long term. A stable household income is one of the most important factors in ensuring healthy, happy children who will grow into bold and ambitious adults. The government's Employment Rights Bill stifles our small businesses when they are already gasping for oxygen. It overreaches, snatching choice out of the hand of business owners who are best placed to balance the interests of their staff members with the viability of their business overall. When practical and affordable, many businesses already offer enhanced maternity and paternity pay in order to retain talent, something that has been stressed this afternoon. A survey of 460 organisations by Brightmind in June 2024 found that 75% of private sector organisations and 97% of public sector organisations already offer enhanced maternity pay. So any changes to statutory maternity and paternity pay must be done after consulting with businesses. We must avoid saddling them with yet more unaffordable costs at a time when they are facing immense pressure. Flourishing businesses provide stable income for families, leading to a strong economy and a brighter future for the next generation. The Conservative record demonstrates our support for parents and families, but this must be done sustainably in a way that backs businesses rather than stifling them.
I now call the Minister, Andrew Weston.
Thank you, Ms Hobhouse. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship and to speak on an issue close to so many people's hearts, as the response to this petition shows. For clarity, I speak for the government this afternoon, but after the previous contribution, I think it's important that I set out that this is a matter of importance to all ministers in the government. I want to begin by thanking all of the members who have taken part in this hugely important debate, particularly my honourable friend, the member for Burton and Uttoxeter, who so eloquently set out the various issues facing new parents on behalf of the Petitions Committee. We heard a number of excellent and thoughtful contributions, and I had intended to attempt to run through all of them and respond individually, but what was most striking about this debate, until perhaps the closing contributions, is the significant unity in the room and the fact that members have come together cross-party to speak with one voice. This shows why the review that the government is undertaking is so important, because the myriad of issues that new parents face, health, financial, time with their children, etc., is so complex, and the need for change is not lost on either myself or the government more widely. I do just want to pick up on a handful of the contributions that were made, and how could I not begin, Ms Hobhouse, with the honourable member for Gloucester. I'm afraid I'm not going to give his son a birthday present today, but please do send my very, very best wishes and congratulations to him too. I know he is a loving and caring parent, and I am sure that he has something lovely planned once we get away from votes this evening. But what I also wanted to do, because he and a number of other members asked, were certain aspects of the current complex web that we have in place around parental pay in scope, is just to clarify the 8 areas that are particularly in scope for the review. So maternity leave and pay, paternity leave and pay, shared parental leave and pay, parental leave unpaid, adoption leave and pay, parental bereavement and leave and pay, neonatal care leave and pay, and maternity allowance. I wanted to assure the honourable member for York Central that the point she makes around discretionary payments is well made. I have responded to a Westminster Hall debate in this chamber before on that specific issue. I undertook then to take it away and feed it into the review, which is predominantly being led on the DBT side, but I did that then and I will do so again now. I wanted to specifically recognise the contribution of my honourable friend from Sherwood Forest, who is a champion on maternity and maternity rights, and she is entirely right to set out the importance of those first few weeks, months and years up to those 1,001 days. But finally, also to recognise the challenge set down by my honourable friend from Walthamstow, but also say at the outset that I will be disappointing members, because I will be pointing to the importance of the review and allowing that to run its course. And the reason that I do so is because what we are looking at here, and the opposition spokesperson set out the many changes just made by her government, is an incredibly complex web of support that has evolved since way back in 1948, with significant changes since then. We have, in effect, one chance to get this right. We've waited a long time for this review. We want to take the time not only to undertake the call for evidence, which we have already done, but also to consult with trade unions, employers, of course, parents and families, and then to have a public consultation. But I'll give way to my honourable friend.
I thank him for getting away, and I agree with him that there's a complexity here that we have to deal with. I just wonder if he could update us on what his department's view is on the Women and Equality Select Committee report that did take evidence, look specifically at this point about parental leave and about 6 weeks at 90% of pay. Nobody's suggesting we can do everything overnight, but there are some things we could do now as a holding measure to start the changes that everybody wants to see, because we certainly on this side, I think over there, recognise the benefits to the economy and the country doing it. So the Women and Equalities Committee does offer perhaps an interim way forward.
And is indeed one of a number of important pieces of work that are feeding into the review. And she does tempt me to promise that we will go further immediately. I'm not able to do that today for the reason that I've set out around wanting to get the review right and take the time to bring forward any changes that we do and any recommendations and the pathway to change in a measured way. But if I just make some... I will, and then after which I hope members will accept that I need to make some progress.
Thank you. I'm sure everybody recognises how important it is to do it once and do it right. Is he able to commit to legislating on this in this Parliament?
I think we'd need to see what came out of the review, but what we are committing to is to set out a roadmap to change as a result of the review. I understand the point that he is making, and I will take that back and feed in his desire and indeed that of other members for as swift action as possible on this. So just in general, some opening comments, having spent several minutes prior to coming to this, just to say that I do appreciate that parental leave and pay are vital to new mums and dads. It gives them the space to spend time together as a new family. These first months and moments are critical in ensuring that a child is happy, healthy and well adjusted. It's something that runs deeper than pound signs and percentage points. Bringing a child into the world or into your home is a major event in anyone's life, and it is one parent should enjoy free from the stresses of the workplace. But we know that the current system isn't working for everyone. It is almost 40 years since statutory maternity pay was introduced for working women in 1987, half a century since maternity leave was introduced in 1975, and almost 75 years since the start of maternity allowance in 1948. In the years since, the world of work and the world at large have changed beyond recognition. Gone are those age-old stereotypes about men belonging in the workplace and women in the home, and the lines between home and work have never been more blurred. As times have changed, there have been tweaks and updates. Paternity leave and adoption leave in 2003, shared parental leave and pay in 2014, neonatal care leave just this year. But like a road network that evolves over time, it is no longer as simple to navigate as it could be. We need something purpose-built for people's journeys today. So in July, in partnership with the Department for Business and Trade, we launched the Parental Leave and Pay Review. It's time to go back to first principles, to work out exactly what the system needs to deliver and for whom. Mums, dads, and others, and consider all the options before mapping out a new way forward. That starts with remembering why maternity pay was introduced in the first place. It was primarily about the health and safety of women and their babies during pregnancy and in the months following childbirth. That is why, as the review progresses, the first, but of course not only objective that we have in mind for the parental leave and pay system is ensuring it supports maternal health, making sure women have enough money and time off work to stay healthy, physically and mentally, during the latter stages of their pregnancy and whilst recovering from birth. Secondly, it needs to promote economic growth. When we give more new parents the freedom to stay in and progress in work, it's not just mums, dads and kids who benefit. Employers, too, will benefit from keeping parents' skills and experience. At present, just over half of new mothers go back to their old job following the birth of their child. We want to build a system in which every mother who wants to feels supported if they make this choice. New figures show that 5 years after a first birth, the average mother's earnings will have dropped by more than £1,000 a month. Mothers deserve better. Our third objective is to help children to get the best start in life. Again, by giving new parents the resources and space to give the care and attention their new arrivals need. And fourth, it needs to support parents' childcare choices so they can balance care and work in a way that works for them, enabling co-parenting and reflecting the realities of modern work. Ultimately, we want a system that's fairer and easier to use and that works better for parents and employers. I will, yeah.
I'm really grateful for the speech my honourable friend is making, but will he ensure that there is a matrix over the government's objective which measures inequality in family life and ensures that we close that inequality gap so parents with the greatest deprivation benefit the most from the policy?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. That is one of many really, I think, useful suggestions that have been made today that I will undertake to take away and feed in to the review for consideration. But if I return to what I was saying about the requirement for a fairer system, we shouldn't pretend that there will be easy answers as we go through this work. Some difficult balances will need to be struck. The benefits of allowing parents flexibility must be weighed against the direct costs to employers and the public purse. This petition asks us to increase the rate of statutory maternity and paternity pay to match the national living wage. We should note that maternity pay has never been intended to fully replace a mother's earnings, and any moves in that direction should not be made lightly. The costs of statutory parental pay are largely paid by the taxpayer, with employers able to reclaim at least 92% of the cost from HMRC. I will, yeah.
Thank the member for giving way. I've raised many times in this chamber about the inequality of paternity rights where it comes to unfair dismissal, and that wouldn't cost the taxpayer or businesses anything, because it's a protection that is already felt by those who take shared parental leave, those who take maternity leave and those who take adoptive leave. Would he consider taking that back to the review as well? Because paternity isn't one of the things he mentioned when he was doing his overview about the purposes of the review, but I think we all in this chamber agree how important it is that dads feel that they can take time off, especially where they're eligible.
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and if I did not do that, it's because I was trying to respond and it was an oversight on my part. It is incredibly important, and I will ensure that that is fed in as well. Returning to the question of the specific ask here around the matching with the national living wage, the government currently spends around £3 billion a year on statutory maternity pay and maternity allowance alone. This petition asks to more than double the rate of maternity and paternity pay. In fact, it seeks a 144% increase. That would be far from a trivial expense in a time of difficult fiscal choices. I'm not saying that that won't happen at this point in time. I don't know. We need to go through the process of the review, but we have to take time to carefully consider these questions, given the significant financial implications, before any decisions are made. I want to, cognizant of the time, just skip forward slightly and just remind members that maternity and paternity leave are also just one part of the wider picture when it comes to financial support for parents. Maternity allowance is available for self-employed women and employed women who don't already qualify for statutory maternity pay. Child benefit is available from the date of the child's birth, and the Sure Start maternity grant offers a £500 lump sum payment to mothers receiving one of a range of qualifying benefits. I will give way to my honourable friend. I will then take one more, but then I really do need to move on.
the interrelationship between the point I made earlier about maternity allowance and the £500 Sure Start thing is a problem, because actually if you're self-employed, you're not eligible for that.
Absolutely agree. It's one of the things that I want to see captured in the review. There are a particular range of issues specific to self-employed people. We've heard it in the context of adoption. This is another example. She is entirely right to champion the rights of self-employed people in this space. I will give way to my honourable friend, and then I really will move on.
Several colleagues have mentioned Hughes Law here today, and as the Member of Parliament for Hughes' parents, Kerry and Francis, could I just take this opportunity to welcome the fact the Government has committed to a consultation on the introduction of Hughes Law, and through him, and urge him to go to his ministerial colleagues to see whether we can get Hughes Law in the next King's Speech and get that delivered for families that desperately need support.
Can I thank my honourable friend for his intervention? That is precisely the reason why I gave way, because I expected that that would be the issue that he would be raising, given that it pertains to constituents of his. Again, I just want to say this is probably the most powerful debate that I have attended in Westminster Hall. All of the points that have been raised with me today, I will make sure are fed back, but this is a particularly important issue, not just to him and to his constituents, but more widely, and I will certainly ensure that that happens too. But moving on and moving through a child's life, starting from this year, working parents, including those on maternity, paternity, adoption or shared parental leave, can now claim up to 30 hours of free childcare for children between the ages of 9 months and 4 years. Tax-free childcare can also help parents to save up to £2,000 a year on the cost of childminders, play schemes, after-school clubs, nurseries and nannies. All infant pupils in government-funded schools are eligible for free school meals, as are older children whose parents receive certain benefits. And of course, our Child Poverty Task Force has been looking at what else we can do to drive down family costs, raise family incomes and give every child the best start in life. Our strategy will be published later in the year. And work will be at the heart of our approach, because good work is vital to achieve lasting change and to our central mission of growth. That's why, as a key part of our plan to make work pay, our review of parental leave and pay is so important, and it will build on the progress that we are already making through our work to tackle low pay, poor working conditions and poor job security, breaking down barriers for parents so we can raise living standards and so that they can raise the next generation.
Jacob Collier to wind up.
Thank you, Ms Hobhouse. And can I first of all start by wishing a very happy birthday to my honourable friend for Gloucester's son William on his 2nd birthday. And perhaps he's at a soft play centre in Walthamstow. I'm not quite sure. And can I also thank honourable members for sharing their experiences and those of their constituents too. I think it very powerfully showed the need to have change in this area, and also thank the Minister for setting out the criteria of the review. And I know that he is somebody that cares passionately about these issues as well, because despite what the opposition spokesperson said, there is a real need for change, as we've heard throughout this debate today. The government's parental review does represent the very first of its kind and shows that the Minister and Department is willing to listen, but that review must lead to real action with clear milestones for reform so that we don't see millions of families fall into poverty. So I welcome that the Minister will draw on the evidence that he's heard today and also submissions from unions, employers and families, because no parent should have to face poverty for bringing up their newborn. And if we do get this right, we can strengthen family life, improve equity and give every child a fairer start. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered e-petition 715292 relating to statutory maternity and paternity pay. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.